This is Shannon Riley, the host of Backyard Pet Talk podcast. And today I am talking with Kat Kalaran. She is starting a cat cafe. And I'm really excited to hear her story and telling us all about what a cat cafe is and how she got to start this dream. And so many questions for you today that are Kat. So welcome today, Kat. And her name is Kat and she has a cat cafe. Yes, that is true. So you can get your giggles out now because that's when we're talking. There are two cats here. We have Kat, the business owner, and Kat the cat. So, well, welcome, Kat. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm so happy to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about myself and Orlandia. And just to layer on to the funniness, yes, my name is Kat, and I'm opening up a cat cafe. But what is also funny is my husband's name is Bob, so it's so easy to remember who we are. Bobcat at the cat cafe.
Right, exactly.
We didn't plan all this, but
all the play on words for sure. Oh, that's so because people probably are like when I first met you, what? Tell me about this. Well, first, tell us about yourself. Like, tell us a little bit about how you got here, like your history, because, you're starting something that really we don't know about that much in the United States. And I know you'll be able to tell us more about that. But tell us about you and how you got here.
Sure. Well, a year ago, I was on a different path. I've spent over 20 years in corporate HR. So in financial services, I worked with organizations leading transformation efforts and focused on employee engagement and development, and really focused on helping people thrive in our organizations and also making sure that we had the tools to enable not just the employees within the business, but also the business itself. So I'm doing a complete flip of the tables on my life. Last year, there were a couple of things in which we can get into. Last year, I made the decision, I guess I'm calling it retire from corporate, and I'll focus on this new venture. I'm just starting entrepreneurship for the first time. And I've always had an entrepreneurial heart, but this is the first time that I'm taking, such a massive leap. But once my brain caught on to it, I could never look back. My history again has been over 20 years in a completely different area, but I've always had a love for animals. And it wasn't until I started volunteering at my local animal shelter that, I really, and we can talk about a little bit about that too, but really felt and started to have a better understanding of the challenges that they faced and also the suffering that they endured. And I just couldn't help but be committed to wanting to make a bigger, better impact than I was. And I was in investment banking, and I just needed to fill my life with more purpose.
Yeah. It is. And then, so you have this huge transformation, the changing of your whole life. You're, like you said, you turn the tables upside down. So what led you, what inspired you to open a cat cafe? And well, I guess tell us a little bit more about what a cat cafe is and tell us what inspired you to do this.
Sure. So I think there were definitely a couple of things. I had never heard of a cat cafe before. I had never been to a cat cafe, but a couple things happened all around the same time. Like all the stars were aligning in some way. I had a cat for over 17 years. My ride or die, my soul kitty, Nazi. His full name was Nosferatu. He was my little bite lick kitty. But he passed, and that broke my heart. And okay, I'm gonna get emotional now already.
Oh, but it's all right. When we talk about those forever special animals, I get it.
Well, I mean, this kitty saw me through my 20s, through my 30s, and into my 40s. So he'd been such a huge part of my life for so long, and I was, a huge part of his life. I ended up going to the shelter. I started visiting the shelter more, and it was just a way to connect and heal. Ended up volunteering. It had been something that I'd always wanted to do, and I've also helped out in shelter environments and rescue environments throughout my life. But I had a very busy career. I was working a ton of hours too, but I just was compelled to more. So I started volunteering at my shelter, and I just loved the experience. I mean, even though my week was full, I had a full, very busy, demanding and challenging plate, my full-time job. But every weekend I was getting up early, going to the shelter, scheduling for a couple of hours and staying there a full day. I would always say, however long you need me. And
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, the shelter environment, they definitely need all the hands they can get. They're under resourced, and there's so much that goes on there that they need the support. So my husband sometimes will be like, okay, are you okay?
I know, right?
You're there all the time now. Like, what happened here?
Yeah,
Like, who needs sleep when you can go help cats?
right.
But I just really enjoyed so much. Filled me, it filled my cup to be able to go and spend time with these animals that, and all the different looks and emotions you can see them going through, but having the opportunity to spend time with them and socialize with them, try to soothe them when they're going through, just some challenging times, but then also having an opportunity to speak with the doctors, like those that were coming through the door that may have experienced loss and they were looking for a new cat to bring into their home, or families that were bringing in cats for the first time. I really loved that opportunity to connect with people and also to make sure that we were making the right connections for them and their family, and also setting them up for success by making sure that they had the right resources. Like I started putting barcodes or QR codes, what they call them, in the shelter too, to let people know,
Uh-huh.
like, here's where you can scan more information.
Oh, wow. So you were already an entrepreneur in the shelter system a little bit. You were starting those creative new ideas.
Whatever I can do to reduce the amount of stories that were breaking my heart. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, if you can learn a little bit more about how you can bring two cats together so
Yeah.
that when you do it, you can be more successful instead of me seeing them 2 days later because you
Right.
didn't give it the right amount of patience and care.
Right.
That's just, the way in which we need to serve. So that was going on at the shelter. But at the same time, as much as that was bringing me a lot of joy, it was breaking my
Yeah.
heart to see a lot of cats that every weekend I was falling in love with a
Yeah.
million little furries, but people overlooking them because they were
Yeah.
misunderstanding the cat. They
Mhm.
would say, oh, that cat's mean because it's fearful. It's like, this cat has gone through so much trauma. It's actually, and there's all these bodies walking in and they're
Right.
responding to it. I get to see them when they're more relaxed, when I can give them space to be confident, and they were seeing something different. And I was like, if you could only see. I'm like, what you see is not what you get in the shelter
Right.
environment.
Right.
And
Yes.
so I was like, man, what a crappy thing to say to somebody. And by
Mhm.
the way, here, let's hope that this connection works, because they really
Right.
didn't get a lot of time to connect with them.
Right.
The list goes on. I could tell you like a million things, but
Yeah.
there was that emotion. But I was also, like I said, working a very intense job. I was traveling often to Japan. I was working on Japan. And that is where I discovered cat cafes. I'd never,
Mhm.
as well as like capybaras and, owls, you name it. They have
Ugh.
cafes for everything. Those cafes are more focused on companionship and they have resident animals. But then it was like a light bulb finally went off. I'm like, wait a minute, there's
Uh-huh.
something here. Like, do we have these types of experiences in the US, and what if they were connected with rescue? Thankfully, it wasn't one genius idea I had. Like, other
Right.
people
Yeah.
had decided to merge those ideas together.
Mhm.
And that is actually what's unique about cat cafes in the US, is that we do pair it with rescue.
Mhm.
So the journey of research and everything began. I even started volunteering at a cat cafe locally, so I can
Oh,
understand a little bit more about what it was and what it would be like to possibly to run one of my own.
right.
So that's
And
my
you're
journey
in the,
and how it happened.
yeah, and you're in the process of doing it. So, you were kind of inspired by your love of cats, but then going to Japan and seeing these cats. And like you said, and tell me about what happens in a cat cafe. What would people expect if they like when your cafe will be open, hopefully very soon with the construction delays. We were hoping that we would be doing this and it would be already opened, but that's okay.
Yeah, see the cats in the background, not yet.
Exactly. That's what the hope was, but that's okay. What exactly would people expect if they go to a cat cafe? What are some things like? Because for me, I've been in this business for animals for a very, very long time. And a cat cafe was a very new concept for me. So I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who are like, what the heck is a cat cafe? Is it like a whole bunch of cats in cages, almost like, you're at a pet store? And just thinking of what people might be imagining. So kind of walk us through what it might look like, what it's going to look like when you have your cafe.
Sure. So first of all, Cat Cafe is just bliss. Pure bliss. Well, it does take on there's different components that a cat cafe may have. Not all of them are the same. For our place, Perlandia, we will have just exactly as it sounds, a cafe and a cat lounge. So on one side of the house, we will have light bites and beverages so people can get a coffee and a snack. And they can hang out in our lounge and watch the cats from these beautiful glass windows that we have, especially nice for people that are allergic. And they have family members that like want so desperately to be around cats. So it's fun for the whole family. Although, they'll have a little bit of a divider, but those that do want to have the immersive cat experience, they'll walk through a vestibule, and that's just a fancy word for the in-between space before you get into the cat lounge. And in our in-between space, we have sinks so people can wash their hands. It's important to make sure that we sanitize before we go and hang out with the cats because we want to make sure that they remain healthy. We'll also have people take off their shoes or put little booties on if they need that instead. And that way we're not tracking in, again, anything that can compromise them, and just to keep the space clean. And then they walk into the kitty wonderland and it's like, pick your adventure. On one side, we're going to have a kitten room, and that will be younger cats around the ages of 5-6 months to 1 year. And then we have the adult room where there will be adults of all ages, but the crazy zoomies and the chill cats ish, because we know that that's not always true for adults. But we got to keep them age appropriate. And so we have those two main areas, and we also will have an isolation space in addition to the cat privacy rooms. That's where the litter boxes are, so people don't have to stare at that. We do have to cater to humans,
right?
In our space a little bit. But our isolation space will also allow us to continue to support our rescue partners and our community in the best way that we can. Ideally, that space can be used for moms and their neonates. So especially when kitten season is in full effect. Even though there's been a ton of fosters that have signed up, especially during the fires, there's still a great need for fostering because there's just always a kitten explosion this time of year.
Totally. There's so many. Yeah.
So we can take on fostering moms and their kittens until they're ready for adoption. We also can help with socializing young kittens. I think that's going to be our little like preschool space or something.
Yeah, that'll be cute. Yeah, exactly.
But when people come into the cat areas, they'll be able to flow between the kitten room and the adult room. They have an opportunity to, again, if they're just looking to hang out with cats because they can't have cats of their own because somebody in their household is allergic, or they're not able to have cats because their landlords don't allow it, whatever the case may be, they can have companionship without the commitment. So hang out with cats and enjoy that. And sometimes I had an extreme dose of purr therapy. I mean, I was again in a career that was really challenging and really starting to drain me. I'd been obsessed with HR for so long, and then I was like, oh my God, do I even like this anymore?
Right.
And I mean, as much as I was helping cats and I was helping adopters, they were helping me so much, and so I felt like I was a product of this purr therapy. And so like being able to be around cats and in the company of cats, it is very transformative. So giving people that space to, if they just need a little bit of companionship, if they're going through some healing, especially like if people have lost a pet, it really is a space too where they can they can find comfort in the company of cats and maybe ease into opening up their hearts again. So for people, for all sorts of reasons, can come and just hang out with the cats. It's great too for families, especially getting young kids exposed to the beauty and the responsibility of cat care. And then of course for adopters.
I was just going to ask you. So if you are partnering with rescues in order to have the cats. So you're not, this isn't a bunch of breeders, or this isn't, something, and they're not, like you said, in Japan, they're residence cats. Will pretty much all the cats in the cafe be available for adoption?
Every single one of them. Yep. Yeah. They're all, our breed is rescue. So sometimes people will come to the shelter. When are you going to get a Siamese? Where I can introduce you to a lovely personality,
Right. Exactly. So And so people will be able to also adopt. So they can go and just have that, comfort time, but maybe they're there and they fall in love with a cat or a kitten. So will you do the adoption processes there as well?
Yes, we will. So our rescue partners, best friends, and they are also entrusting us with being able to adopt on site, which is really important to me. I think it's just a better experience for the community, and it reduces the amount of resources and burden on best friends. So
Yeah.
anything that we can do to alleviate them of anything,
Mhm.
we want to be able to do that, because they are doing intake, they are doing the frontline work, and we want to be able to provide them the opportunity to, or help them increase their capacity for care, as well as have their resources focus on cats and animals that are in greater need. So if we can do that with housing as many cats as we possibly can,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
also processing adoptions,
Mhm.
we want to do that. And we're having the adoption counseling conversations. And just to go back to again the what a cat cafe is and that
Mhm.
difference is, in particular for adoptions, it's adopters, it's huge. If you go
Mhm.
to a shelter, you may not be able to interact with that cat. You don't have a lot of time. Again, everybody's under resourced, so you might get rushed. You might not be able to have that quality time. It's pretty
Mhm.
confined. Sometimes too, especially when it comes to kittens or beautiful breeds, they can go up for auction. And
Oh
so
yeah.
people are like, I just got to get this cat really fast. Otherwise, I'm going to have some competition,
Right.
or they don't get a chance to interact because there's too many people all at one time. So
Right.
now you've got people bidding on this animal that they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so here at Perlandia, you can get to know them. You can make
Mhm.
sure, like, are we the right fit? I mean,
Right.
like a cat has a personality,
Right.
They
Yeah.
have,
People don't always realize that cats are very unique and individuals. They just always look at them like they're irritating,
yeah, I just want
So,
a white cat. I just
right.
want a Siamese cat. And it's just like,
Right.
well, what kind of household do you have? Do you
Yeah.
want a cat that has, like I've got my Kumo. He's a crazy personality,
Right.
and then I have
Right.
my Naya, who is totally chill and a cuddler,
Yeah.
and so helping people really think about what will work for their family and what will
Right.
be most successful for that cat. That's our purpose. We want to make
Yeah.
sure that we're creating lasting connections, giving people the time to connect and respect connection, and the
Right.
process of connection. Because I truly, and I mean this like in the most loving way, I never want to see them again. The
Right.
cats.
Yeah. You want them. When I remember
Unless
when
they're
I
like
used to,
sending pictures, but
right, exactly. Like I used to foster when we had talked to itty bitty baby, 1 day old kids, especially as a vet tech, and I could bring them to work with me. And we all, so the feedings every 2 hours was not a big deal. I had to stop doing that once I had my own human baby because she needed to be fed every 2 hours and I couldn't do that in cats. But when they would go to their homes, it was like people say, how can you say goodbye? I'm like, I'm giving them a new life. And I hope that I never see them unless they were coming in for checkups or something like that, because that means that we made a good match. So,
yeah,
yeah. Hmm.
absolutely. And
That,
I think it puts there's so much trauma on a cat too. And people
mhm.
don't get to always see that, right? And I see it all the time. Like when they are surrendered and they're returned,
Right.
and every time, a cat's changing that environment, it has such a tremendous impact on them. And so, we're really about creating a space where adopters can really assess and make meaningful connections, and creating a space where a cat can feel like a cat and have
Right.
confidence and be able to have choice and exhibit its natural behaviors.
Right.
In a shelter cage, they can't do that. It
Yeah.
transforms their behavior. It transforms, it has a huge impact on them. And so we would just want a place where cats can be cats.
And I don't think people all realize, I mean, so many times you hear, oh, it's just a cat. Cats don't need this. Cats don't need that. And, people don't understand that, they have personalities and they are all unique. They're, just like dogs, they're just different needs and in some, but there are, or horses or any of the other animals that people connect more to. A lot of times poor cats are just like, oh, it's just a cat, and changing that narrative so that you understand that it is hard for them if you dump them off or you do all these things, so giving them
I
more
got
of a,
feelings,
yeah,
man.
exactly. So how are some ways, like, what are some things that the cat cafe can help cats with? Like, you already, you're getting them in new environments, which is great. So they're not in their other areas. But are there other things you think the cat cafe can help cats specifically for, that are helpful things for the cats besides just they're not in a tiny little cage in the rescue?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, it gives them the opportunity to have more free roaming space, to stretch,
Hmm.
to claw at something, because these are natural and important things that they need to be able to do. And it also gives them an opportunity to be better socialized, both with cats and with humans and with children and with
Hmm.
adults. So the more exposure that they get to people and they also get to other animals, that also helps us to better be able to tell their story too, and what
Right,
environments would be good for them.
right.
And so it also, every cat's going to be good in a cafe environment either, right?
Yeah,
But for the most part, I think, our intention is to provide them with a space that's going to be healthier for them, both emotionally and physically and mentally. These are all really important. These are just as important for cats as they are for humans, And again,
yeah.
when they're in that enclosed shelter environment, that puts them at risk.
Well, and I mean, it's just, and you also get a really chance to see their real personalities, and your staff will be able to say, if somebody came in and was like, I really can't have one that's like wild and crazy, you can kind of direct them to, oh, well, this one's the mellow one. Or if they're like, I want one that I can take on walks with down the street, on a harness, you'll know more about their personalities. Where a lot of times at the shelter, people know sometimes about the dogs, like the dog walkers know at least a little bit about the dogs, but the cats, a lot of times they just get cages clean, put back in the cat, cages clean, put back. And so they don't really get a chance to express their personality, and you don't get to see their personality. So I feel like this will be a good way of being able to decipher those different personalities to match that for the families too.
Absolutely. And I get that question all the time at the shelter. Like, can you tell me a little bit about this cat's, behavior or its background or its health? And I'm like, it's a stray that came over the counter. That's all I got for you.
Exactly.
But again, in the cat cafe and with our staff and also with the support of best friends,
Right.
we are monitoring these cats in a more engaged or immersive sort of way. And
Yeah.
the beauty too is, one of the things that I'm really excited about is we've partnered with Taylor Pet, and they have cat collars, cat
Okay.
tags. And so
Oh,
it serves multiple purposes for families or cat guardians, for example. You can scan the QR code, and if your cat's lost, then it has that
oh,
information.
uh,
Also, there are these profiles where, as a cat guardian, you can build the profile and share it with your vet, your
cool.
cat sitter, your groomer. In our environment, visitors or guests can scan that QR code, and then it shows the cat profile to them. So all of those
Uh-huh.
questions that people are often asking in the shelter that we don't always have answers to, they'll be able to see it too. They can scan the QR code
Oh,
and get
that's
to know the cat
awesome.
a little bit more. It'll tell them about their behavior, their little personality quirks. We're just going to
Exactly.
keep everything up to date. Also, if they're a bonded pair, that's really
Hmm.
important. And in the shelter environment, and I'm not knocking, I hope that it doesn't come
Oh,
across
total.
this way.
No, I mean, shelters are right now, especially right now, today, they're over capacity. Most of them are over 100%. I mean, like 120. I mean, they've got animals coming out of the ears. They can't take, so a lot of them can't take anymore. I mean, they don't have enough fosters. So it's not that shelters do a great thing, and they, have a
With what
great
they have.
resource and they do with what they can. And there's not a lot of money in shelters. There's not a lot. So shelters do what they can, but this is just another alternative, just like fostering, when people can foster, or when dogs, animals can be in a bigger space. No, because shelters are what they are, and they're necessary. But if we can find some alternatives to give some relief, I think that's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're really excited about having the opportunity to showcase all the animals, and also again connect people with as much detail about them as we can. The one thing I was going to say too is, in shelters we might mark that they're best buds and we'll try to do our best, but they'll break up those pairings,
Hmm.
because
Yeah,
they have to.
right.
It's whereas in our space we want to honor that. I mean, we all, again, as humans, have really important bonds, and
Right.
imagine, what that's like,
Right.
for a cat. And so having things like, this kitty is a part of a bonded pair. So if
Right.
you're looking for two, these are the cats for you. And again, respecting and appreciating that bond. And I think, what we can also do in the cat cafe environment is we help to really amplify the networking too, giving
Yeah.
cats a lot of exposure, and again, having them in a home-like, warmer environment, so that while they are waiting
Right.
for their forever home, it is in a place that is comfortable and nurturing, and not putting them in a situation that doesn't really set them up for success, which can be
Right.
the case in a shelter environment,
For sure.
because
And some
they could
animals
develop.
end up staying in a shelter for a really long time because maybe they're shy,
Mhm.
so they don't get as much attention, or, and this gives them, you have opportunity to help that. So
Yeah.
if these are some great things, I mean, I think cats are going to be like, can I come to come from the shelter, please? They'll be like, I want to go. But how can cat cafes, and we've talked about this before a little bit before, but how can they help people? How can the cat cafes help people? So, matching with their cats, but also like reducing stress and those kinds of things. What are some things you found in cat cafes besides your own bliss that you've experienced? What are some things that you've noticed with other people or adults or children?
I mean, I think that it helps with the feline human bond. You have, I think, in a cat cafe, it is very focused around those relationships and those connections. And what we're really focused on is building that connection, building appreciation around that connection, and just having a greater appreciation for cats as well, like understanding that these things are just misconceptions, right? That cats don't require much attention, and
Yeah.
you can go on trips for however many weeks and just give them
Right,
like a
right.
feeder, and that could work, but there is,
Some cats don't
it
won't do well with
matters
that.
to them.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so focusing on, getting connected with responsible guardianship, and just understanding, just the role of a cat parent and feeling supported. It's really important to us to create a community. And if people need any type of support, have any questions, or want to learn, from like
Yeah,
how to clip nails to like how
right.
many litter boxes to whatever the case may be, it's a place of learning and mutual growth. So I hope that that's what people really find Purrlandia to be, in addition to being a place, again, where they can de-stress and hang out with felines. I mean, it's scientific fact, or they're working on it, that cats,
Uh-huh.
cafes, but cats really are little healers, and
Well,
there
so many
is so
animals are. We
much.
get so
Yeah.
much healing from animals just in general, and then, and especially when cats are your animal, that helps. Now, before we sign off, you just talked a little bit, you touched on a couple things. So, what are a couple things that tips, and we can just do a couple that, because I know you have like a encyclopedia of ideas in your head of how to make cats' lives better at homes. But any tips for the listeners for how, like things that they could do for their cats at home? And then you talked
Um,
about litter boxes and the importance of multiple litter boxes. You've also talked about substrate with me, but what's the proper thing for that? So any of the tips that maybe you most commonly have to give at rescues that people maybe don't know about cats.
I think, and again, just because we were talking about these misconceptions about cats not needing attention, and they're just sort of aloof and on their own, play is essential. Enrichment is essential. So making sure that in your home you have places for them to climb and to hide. Doesn't have to be anything too fancy, just a little window perch, or having access to the top of a bookshelf to give them that height, makes that helps them to feel secure. But also toys and
Mhm.
playtime, especially if you've got a cat. You're like, oh, every time I walk down the hall, the cat's like swatting at my ankles. Oftentimes that's play aggression,
Mhm.
and they just need different. If you find giving at least 15 minutes of playtime, you'll find that actually does make a difference. And not only does it help release a lot of that pent up energy,
Right.
because just like us, they get bored. and they,
Yeah.
they need to get that out. It also helps to further reinforce that bond.
Right.
And it's fun and it's
Right.
funny. And like, again, it helps them release what they need to release, and you can release some stress
Right.
just like laughing at their silly little antics and what
Yeah.
they do too, so it's just
Yeah.
like, it's also, I guess that kind of leads into another point, and I'm sure many cat
There's
guardians will do this too, but we all have our schedules and things, and these ideas of what we want and when we want it, but like respecting the cat time, and like respecting their boundaries, and
Mhm.
also the amount of time sometimes it takes for them to warm up.
Right.
Again, just like humans, in 2 seconds we're not saying, oh, hug me and cuddle me,
Right, exactly. I think having like respecting their boundaries, because cats get, I hear people on the behavior side, they got the cat that bites me, and this can also be with dogs, but since we're talking about like cats, that bite me or they scratch at me or they do, they're chasing me down the hallway or any of these things. But like just like us, some people really like to be touched and other people don't. Some cats really like to be pet, others do not want to, they don't like that, isn't feeling good to them. Or they only want to be fed, behind their ears, or they only want to be pet on their back and not on their belly, or whatever. I mean, just like us, you can have every scenario possible with, an animal and a cat. And also like, if they're sleeping, some don't care if you wake them up. Some, really don't want you to wake them up. And then that figuring out their needs. So having those boundaries and making sure their needs are met, because that just makes, just like for us, it makes us happier, it makes them happier. So I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because people don't think about any animal like it's still sometimes old thinking that, well, they're like they have to do like with dogs, well, I told them to sit or I commanded them. And I'm like, well, what if they were in the middle of doing something else? Like if somebody right now said, come over here, I'd be like, I'm busy, don't bother me right now. Animals have that same need sometimes, of needing to be able to say no, or I'm not comfortable with that. So I think that's a great thing to bring up.
Yeah, and they deserve that too, So I just, and they give us signals, and cats are a little bit more subtle than maybe other animals, and so just understanding cat body language,
Right.
they'll tell you, like it might
Yeah.
just be how they flick their tail or how they, how they move their ears, but
Hmm.
they'll give you sort of that hint, like you were just saying, cats that may not like to be pets. Sometimes there are cats that like to be pet, and then they're like, okay, for a couple
I'm done.
minutes, and then we're done.
Yeah.
And so they'll give you'll see like their body ripple to let you know, okay, this is we're done,
Hmm.
we've had our session, and respect that. And then I
Right.
just, anyway, so I think that's a key one, because I see that all the time, like, oh, let me just go ahead and pet. I'm like, well, or can I hold the cat? And I always, if they'll let you,
Right.
and let
Exactly.
them invite you rather than us forcing ourselves on them. It's the right thing to do in my book, and
Exactly.
it creates better bonds.
Exactly.
What else? I know that, people get a little bit nervous about having two cats, but
Hmm.
especially when we talk about like enrichment and play and how important that is, even though it can sound like a bit of a challenge, and it may be, like if you don't have the resources or the space for two cats, it's
Right.
also not just amazing for them, right? Like, because
Right.
it really helps them like with boredom, and they have like amazing connection, but it also helps, the cat guardian too,
Right.
because if you don't have always the time to give that 15 minutes of at least of play, then they can play together. But just thinking about how we are as humans and how much relationships and connection are important to us, it's just as important to a cat. So think about two.
Exactly.
Double
So,
the fun.
well, it's been great having you on today, Kat, and hopefully people have learned something about cats and cat cafes and adoption, and start thinking about this in a different way, and come out. And we're really excited to see how the business goes, and hopefully have you as a guest more, and we can talk specifically about cat stuff too. But we really wanted to honor the fact that you're starting this cat cafe as an entrepreneur, a woman in business too, which is always, a special place in my heart to have, to support other women that are going into small business, because it's not always easy. But when you're following your passion, it makes it a lot easier, to do. So thank you so much for being here. And we will put all of your information on with this podcast so people can find you, or, and you have some fun merch. You also, people can they can pay for time, with the cats. There's so many opportunities that they can, once you get established, they can check everything out. So I'm super happy to have you. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, I look forward to the next time. Maybe we can do it and we'll have the cat cafe in the background.
That would be awesome. We'll do us a little
home.
tour. That is great. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you all enjoy listening to Kat's story about her cat cafe.
Thank you so much. Take care, Shannon.
Thank you.